Hi girls, so I promised that I would make some videos for Act 3 to make sure that everybody could catch up if you were absent right before break. So I thought I had them already made. I don't, so here we go. So beginning with Act 3, Scene 2, we can almost title this scene, or this act really, as the moment when changes begin. And that totally makes sense when we think of that plot triangle of a tragedy, because this, of course, is where the climax is happening, right? Like the protagonist is going to, our tragic hero, Macbeth, is going to make some decisions that he can't come back from. And of course, the big decision that he has made that he will never be able to come back from is the one that he makes in Act 3, Scene 1, when he decides that Banquo must die. And so he has hired these murderers that are going to go and kill Banquo, but not just Banquo, but Banquo's son as well, because of course, Banquo was predicted to be the father of a long line of kings. And of course, we know that James I considers Banquo one of his ancestors, so this very much would have pleased the king, and so Shakespeare makes sure to include it. But back to Scene 2. So at the beginning of Scene 2, it's actually Lady Macbeth who opens the scene, and she begins it by saying to a passing servant, is Banquo gone from court? Now, this could be just this throwaway line, right? Like it doesn't seem to necessarily mean anything, but the fact that she's having to ask, she doesn't know. All of a sudden, this woman who has been so integral in all of the machinations of the play so far, has been so essential to the manipulations and the plotting and the planning, suddenly she doesn't even know who is in her own home. She doesn't know if Banquo is at court at her house. And she has to ask a servant, someone who is below her in the social hierarchy. And so all of a sudden we're beginning to see some shifts, some changes, right? And so the servant says, no, madam. And she responds to the servant and says, say to the king, I would attend his leisure for a few words. Now again, throwaway lines, except they reveal so much about this shift that has begun to occur in their marriage. First of all, notice that she doesn't reference him by name. She doesn't reference him by her husband. That's how she greets him when he comes home in Act 1, Scene 5. She opens her arm and says, my husband. She now calls him by his title, say to the king. And now she's having to ask, say to the king, I would attend his leisure for a few words. She's having to ask permission to be able to speak to her husband. Is the king available? Can I talk to him? Can you go and find him? All of a sudden, there is a power dynamic that has shifted. And again, it's very subtle, but we can read between the lines. Now, the servant leaves, and Lady Macbeth states to the audience, not in a soliloquy, because it's too short to be a soliloquy, but in these lines that are really revealing her internal thoughts here. She says, naught had, all spent, when our desire is got without content. 'Tis rather to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. So let's unpack those 4 lines. Naught had, all spent. We've gained nothing, and we've risked everything. When our desire is got without content. Well, what is it that they desired? Well, the crown, right? Power. But she says that she's not content. And when we ask ourselves, well, why is she not content? Of course, we come back to this reason of she's worried. She feels guilty. She can't be happy because she's constantly living in fear of being caught. She's constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop. And she knows what will happen if they are discovered. 'Tis better to be that which we destroy. Well, what did they destroy? Duncan. So when she says 'tis better to be that which we destroy, is she saying that she would rather be dead? Yeah, kind of. 'Tis better to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. And I love that phrasing, doubtful joy. It's an oxymoron, right? 2 things that shouldn't go together, like baby grand or jumbo shrimp. Doubtful joy is no joy at all. If we can't be certain why, then it's no joy. right? Like if we're in fear, if we're consumed with guilt, can we really truly be happy? The audience is really kind of taken aback by this. Lady Macbeth, again, confidence is her kind of trademark here. She is a strong woman. She is a determined woman, and yet we're beginning to see those emotional cracks, right? Now Macbeth enters the stage. He's come to be able to, speak with her. And she says to him, "Why do you keep alone?" So all of a sudden we know that Macbeth is not with her, is not confiding in her, is not spending time with her. He's by himself. He's isolating himself. And so that's giving us kind of some insight into his mental state as well. Why do you keep alone? Of sorriest fancies. She's like, stop thinking of everything that's done. And then she says, what's done is done. It's such a contradiction, right, to what she was just expressing to us, the audience. And it kind of goes back to when Macbeth is on stage. She's still trying to take control. She's still trying to be in control and kind of like, get him to snap out of it, that sort of thing. What's done is done. Stop thinking about it. And his response is fairly harsh, right? He says, we have scotched the snake, not killed it. And you can tell the aggression because listen to the vowel sounds. We have scotched the snake, not killed it. They're aggressive vowels. She'll close and be herself. Now, your side note in your book will tell you that the reference to the snake is a reference to the killing of Duncan. Okay, and so he's saying, we may have killed Duncan, but we've scotched it. It's not completely finished. Banquo was still alive. We don't know where Malcolm and Donalbain is. And so now we know that Macbeth's paranoia is growing. We know that Macbeth is worried about what could happen, about somebody finding out. He's also consumed with guilt. And so we know that he's beginning to spiral as well. Now, within Macbeth's lines, I always look for two kind of big motifs. Certainly this one of animals. And if you look over the next lines of Macbeth, you'll be able to find 4 references to animals. Certainly the snake that we just heard. But he also talks about his mind being full of scorpions. He talks about the bat that will fly at midnight, and he talks about a beetle. And if we take those 4 animal references kind of combined and look at them in terms of what motif that they are presenting, they're all really dark animals that are creepy and crawly and negative. I mean, like if we just need to a blanket connotation, they're negative. And so we can begin to tell where his mindset is as well. Remember that motifs are always kind of taken, not literally, but we're looking at the associations. What can we see there? I always like that phrasing, full of scorpions, is my mind, because I kind of picture like bugs when they're crawling all over one another, and it grosses me out. But it's that idea that once again, his thoughts are so all-consuming. He can't concentrate on anything, right? It's just going all over the place. And he rambles and he rambles and he rambles and he rambles. And finally she says, you must leave this. You've got to stop talking this way. And he says, thou knowest that Banquo and his son lives. And now the audience is like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Thou knowest that Banquo and his son lives. And Lady Macbeth responds and says, but in their copy, nature is not interned. They won't live forever, is what she's saying here. And Macbeth says, well, thank goodness for that. And he says, before the bat will fly tonight, there will be a deed of dreadful note. And in one of her last lines of the scene, Lady Macbeth turns to her husband and asks, what's to be done? And again, a very simple line, but shows us so much about how she has changed and their relationship has changed. She doesn't know. She doesn't know what the plan is. He has not asked her for insight. He has not asked her to help him. He's come up with this all on his own. And so when she says, what's to be done? Suddenly we see that their entire marriage dynamic, that power dynamic, has shifted completely, especially when he replies, be innocent of the knowledge. So he is not going to tell her. Now we can look at this a couple of different ways, right? Maybe he's trying to protect her, and if she's innocent, then she wouldn't be charged, but that's not the case. Maybe he doesn't trust her any longer. He's so paranoid that he doesn't even trust his own wife. Now, that's probably a little bit more plausible. But the fact that he now feels that he has enough power and control to no longer share his plans with her marks a huge dynamic shift in their marriage. That scene ends. And as we go into scene 3, which is, I think, maybe the shortest scene of the entire play, the only thing that we really need to know about scene 3 is that the murderers attack Banquo. Banquo's death happens on stage in front of the audience. The audience would have loved to have seen that. They want to see, somebody die. They like the blood. They like the gore. And Banquo's death surely would have been long. It would have been drawn out. It would have been dramatic. It would have been bloody. Banquo dies this horrible death in front of the audience, but his son escapes. And in fact, Banquo says to his son, "Fly, good Fleance, fly." With his last words, he saves his son. He says, go, get away, escape, save yourself. Fleance escapes. And with that, we know that the witch's predictions can still come true.